But first, the president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Donald Kaberuka, says nothing can stand in the way of long-term growth in the region. The bank has focused on major infrastructure developments such as roads, railways, power plants, and communications to help increase trade between African countries. We asked Dr. Kaberuka how much responsibility for Africa's rise as an economic powerhouse rests on the shoulders of its leaders.
Now, but leadership, not simply top leadership. It means leadership at all levels. Because far too often, we Africans have blamed top leaders for everything. I don't agree with the notion that somehow African leaders are an exception. They are weaker than leaders all over the world. Some people believe that European leaders are lacking at the moment. But because there are other leaders in the system, things are moving. So, yes, leadership, but at all levels of society, business leaders, trade union leaders, academia, political leaders, all of us.
Someone said the other day that the Africa train has left the station. Either you're on it or you're going to lose out. You agree?
It has left the station. It should have left the station several years ago. So it has to catch up. It has to catch up, and I think that is happening now. The world is beginning to take note. There are still a few Afro-pessimists who will pick up on Mali, will pick up on Somalia, will pick up on an event here. There was an article yesterday here from one of the influential American papers saying because of Mali, investors are changing perceptions. There was another article from Foreign Policy saying all this African rise is a hype. Now, I disagree, and I'll tell you why. Nothing will change Africa's demographics. Not Mali, not Somalia. Nothing will change Africa's trend in urbanization. Those crises will take place, but this dynamic is there. Nothing will change the dynamics of internal trade because it is driven by the demand of things I've just mentioned to you. Now, there will be crises now and then. After all, Europe in the last century saw 2 world wars on its own theater, in the Pacific theater, and they overcome it. So people want to pick on an event here, on a crisis here, to question Africa's optimism will always be there. But we have to tell our own story, as you're doing now, and the story is nothing will stop this dynamism in the long term.
I'm glad you mentioned we have to tell our own story, Mr. President, because for the longest time, others would come to Africa to tell our story for us. Now, we are taking the bull by the horns. We are telling our own story. How important will that be going forward?
Oh, but you know the famous African saying that until the lions speak, it's only the hunter's story which you'll hear. Now it is time for the lions to tell their story. Because up to now we're hearing the story of the hunters. Now it's good that the lions now are coming out, telling their own story. It's a different story, but we have to do that. And I think this is what has happened in Asia, Asia Pacific, less so in Latin America, which we have to do. In other words, acknowledge the failures, the weaknesses, things we have to fix we ourselves, and get on fixing them, whether it is the economy, whether it is the politics, whether it is the inequality and the rest of it. Not deny them, not pretend they don't exist. Because, you know, as Arabs like to say, you can't hide the sun with fingers. But having said that, indicate that you know what to do, you know the direction of travel, and begin as we are doing right now.
We see the growth is looking good. We see everybody's talking great about Africa, and then we get complacent.
I don't agree with you, Jeff. Look at the current global crisis. Who caused it? Between 2000 and 2005, a lot of complacency in North America and Europe that we have never had so good. Credit was cheap. Things were okay. Some countries were getting to full employment. They didn't see the bubble bursting down the road. Combine that with greed on Wall Street. And now the whole world is paying in terms of unemployment. Are you going to blame Africans for that? Are you going to blame Asians for that? No, nobody is. I think that for far too long we have played victim. I think it is important to acknowledge things we need to fix, including a bit of complacency now and then, But I think on balance, we have a positive story and we must tell it.